Hi there, Leslie here, and today I want to talk about H. pylori, the very common bacteria that 50% of the world's population has. In previous videos, I've talked about how it can lead to premature gray hair in addition to ulcers. And in this video, I really want to talk about what we can do to keep the population of H. pylori down in our gut biome so that we can still benefit from the good things that it can do. But also this diet would be appropriate for someone who is recovering from H. pylori. So first of all, just to recap again, H. pylori is a super common bacteria depending on where in the world you are. Some countries, 80% of the population will have an H. pylori infection. Other countries, it might be as low as 20%, 10%. It really does depend. It's much more common in the developing world than it is in the developed world. And this is why Professor Martin Blaser, who's the director for the Center for Biotechnology and Medicine at Rutgers University in New Jersey, says that actually in the developed world, the obesity epidemic is running rampant because we have lost our colonies of what he describes as commensal bacteria. These are bacteria that have always been with us humans. They have developed with us as we as a species have developed over millions of years, and we need them to play a particular role in our gut biome. Blaser says that, for instance, with H. pylori, it actually has a good role, which is that it controls the production of a hormone called ghrelin. I like to think of ghrelin as the gorge hormone. Gorge starts with a G, ghrelin starts with a G, so it's a really easy way to remember. But basically, the hormone ghrelin tells our bodies to continue to eat even when we don't need to eat. And Martin Blaser says that this is why in countries like the United States and the United Kingdom, we've taken so many rounds of antibiotics, we've completely destroyed our H. pylori colonies, among other bacteria, and that has resulted in an inability to control production of ghrelin. So that's the thesis. Now, if you've had H. pylori, you know you don't want an overgrowth of this. The pain and gastric upset that you have as a result of it is simply not worth it. You probably are thinking, I don't care how much ghrelin I have, I just don't want this pain. And that makes a lot of sense. So the traditional protocol to get rid of H. pylori is antibiotics, antimicrobials, and Pepto-Bismol. And some people will do those up to 3 times in order to get rid of H. pylori. Now, there are other things you can do. Definitely, if you've got an ulcer, you have got to treat this. Do the protocol that I just mentioned, the traditional allopathic one. You can help the process along by doing other things to reduce the inflammation caused by an H. pylori overgrowth. And that would be, for instance, taking omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids, which come from oily fish like mackerel, wild salmon, anchovies, sardines, incorporating those into your diet as a way to get the inflammation down. You could also incorporate things like turmeric, which is anti-inflammatory. Put that into your diet as well. But in addition, you will want to heal and reseal your gut lining. Now, the gut lining is only 1 cell thick. That's kind of hard to believe when you think about it. The gut is essentially a bag that is only 1 cell thick inside of us, and that 1 cell barrier is the only thing that separates our food from the rest of our bloodstream. And one problem that H. pylori causes is it increases the secretion of a chemical called zonulin. This was discovered by Professor Alessio Fasano, formerly at the National Institute for Health, now at Harvard Med School. And what he says, zonulin, if you think of the gut lining as, let's think of it like your fingers fit together. And these are the villi, the little carpet-like fingers that absorb the nutrients from your food. this is the gut lining, and zonulin opens up these tight junctions, and it allows antigens, protein antigens, and bacterial antigens through into the bloodstream. Now that could, in an extreme case, trigger an autoimmune attack. It is definitely not a good thing because you're also not able to, those fingers are not able to absorb the food. And that is unfortunately something that an H. pylori overgrowth will do, is it will increase the secretion of zonulin. So what you want to do is you want to heal and reseal the gut. So I've talked about how you decrease inflammation with things like omega-3s and turmeric, but you can reseal the gut lining by taking things like bone broth and grass-fed collagen. You might even try something like Dr. Zach Bush's product Restore, which it hasn't been my experience, but I didn't have a leaky gut. Other friends of mine who've tried it, other biohackers, have said it did work. So you could look into Restore as well. And the good news about the gut lining is that it replenishes itself, it repairs and renews itself every 5 to 7 days. So this is a relatively quick process. If you just take your bone broth for say 5 to 7 days, you will be doing a lot towards healing that gut lining, and then again, take some omega-3s and some turmeric with it, and you'll be keeping the inflammation down. Now, what can we do to keep the population of H. pylori down? Well, one thing you can do, if you just think about any neighborhood, you can outcompete any particular resident in the neighborhood by bringing in new people, right? So it's the same with a colony in the gut. You can actually preferentially feed certain colonies that will outcompete H. pylori. And the way to do this is, for example, getting the right kinds of fiber into your diet. So these are things that carry both nutrition, but they also will feed the gut bacteria because they are prebiotics. So if, for example, you were to take something with sulforaphane, these are vegetables like the brassicas. So it would be cauliflower, broccoli, sprouts. For example, broccoli sprouts are a fantastic source of sulforaphane, watercress, bok choy. These are all good choices in terms of their sulforaphane content. And I like having them cooked. Everything needs to be cooked in this category except for the broccoli sprouts, which you can have raw because they're sprouted. But the others all will have high oxalate content. I'm sorry, it gets a bit complicated, but oxalates I don't like. As a hypothyroid patient, I don't like them because they suppress thyroid function. So by all means, eat them for their sulforaphane content. Make sure you cook them. If you're going to boil them, throw out the water that you've boiled them in, because that's where all the oxalates will be. If you want to put kale into your smoothie, don't put it in raw. Boil it first, throw it in then after it's cooked into your smoothie. I know that sounds complicated, but you don't want the oxalates. You do want the sulforaphane, you don't want the oxalates. So what happens when you have, say, cooked broccoli? The sulforaphane in the broccoli will actually keep the H. pylori colony down, but the fiber in it will actually be preferentially feeding the good bacteria in your gut that you want to grow up and force out the colonies, the overgrown colonies of H. pylori. Not to mention the fact that something like broccoli has a lot of vitamins as well, a lot of B vitamins, and that's a problem when you have H. pylori because, as I mentioned earlier, it does inhibit digestion of certain vitamins and minerals. Among those would be vitamins A, C, E. I mentioned B12 earlier, I mentioned iron earlier, but then other minerals like magnesium and copper. For those of you who are really concerned, not just about ulcers, but about premature gray hair, we know that copper, iron, B12 are all implicated in pigment and gray hair, and so you would want to increase that. So broccoli is fantastic. There are so many ways in which it is actually beneficial if you have an H. pylori overgrowth. The other thing, I mentioned smoothies. When you choose the fruit that you put into your smoothies, try to choose low glycemic index. Fruit, berries in particular, are very good against H. pylori. They have a lot of good fiber in them that will again preferentially feed the other colonies that cannot compete the H. pylori. So these would be things like raspberries and blueberries, for instance. So that's on the fiber front. And of course, you could take a prebiotic supplement. There are a lot of powders that you can get at your health food store with prebiotics in them. And those would be good choices to add to your smoothies too. So what about probiotics and reestablishing the good colonies of bacteria? Well, you can take probiotic capsules, but my problem with probiotic capsules is that you only have a finite number of strains of bacteria in each one. So that's fine if you take it for a month or for however long the bottle that you're taking lasts. But we know from the work of Professor Blaser and other individuals like Rob Knight at University of Colorado that the more diverse the gut biome is in many different strains of bacteria, the healthier the individual is. And so what would be great would be if you're going to take a capsule, finish the bottle, but then when you're done, get a new bottle with different strains of bacteria in it. And one of the best ways that you can actually replenish good bacteria in the gut is by taking fermented foods. It's going to be a lot cheaper than probiotics, and just a little teaspoon of sauerkraut or kimchi or other fermented foods is going to have billions, probably tens of billions of bacteria in it, good bacteria, versus say a capsule that might have, a 10 million or 100 million of these bacteria. So you get more bang for your buck with fermented foods, and there are going to be loads of other videos on YouTube about how you can do this yourself. So I won't go into that, but that would be a really good way to do it. Now, I've talked already about how what we want to do is heal and reseal the gut, how we want to decrease inflammation, for example, with omega-3s and turmeric, how we want to reintroduce fiber. But the final thing we want to do is improve digestion and reintroduce some of the vitamins and minerals that have been lost when we've had an H. pylori overgrowth. So I mentioned that H. pylori decreases absorption of vitamin B12. Well, the reason it does that is it actually lowers stomach acid, and we need to reintroduce something that helps with the digestion of our food. And the two best things for that would be hydrochloric acid and pepsin. So if you go again to your health food store or you look online, you will find lots of digestive enzymes. Look for those two things. Hydrochloric acid is fantastic. I've been taking it for years, and it just does help with increased absorption of the nutrients in your food, as well as with supplements too. And then the other thing you want to do is you want to increase your intake of things like iron and your B vitamins, the vitamins A, C, E, magnesium, copper. These are all things that I've previously mentioned will be depleted by an H. pylori overgrowth. So that, I hope, in a reasonably short video is a look at all the things you can do to keep H. pylori under control after you have treated it, and how you can actually use foods and supplements to heal from H. pylori, so hopefully it never gets out of control again. If you've got any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below. As you know, I read and answer each and every one. And equally, if you'd like to sign up for my anti-aging newsletter, you can do that in the link below. See you next time. Thanks again for watching.